with that, we'll move into the agenda, which is I'll call the St. Clair Shores City Council budget hearing for the 2020-21 special meeting of Tuesday, May 19th, 2020 to order. Mary, if you can call the roll.
Mayor Walby.
Here.
Councilmember Aisha.
Here.
Councilmember Kieran.
Here.
Councilmember Frederick.
Present.
Councilmember Rusi.
Present.
Councilmember Vitale.
Here.
A quorum present.
We're going to start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United
States of America
and to the
and to the
republic
republic which stands
one
one
nation,
nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Make sure we go over all this correctly, Mary. We are having this obviously through a teleconference due to coronavirus. This does meet the governors of Michigan's executive order of 2075, which extends the remote participation in public meetings until June 30th, 2020. We will provide audience participation here prior and at the end. If the public wants to participate, they can dial 312-626-6799. Enter the meeting code of 886-2485-7291 and then pound. And then we will recognize you and then you'll dial 9. So that's, we'll open that up now. I don't know if you have any emails regarding it too. You read some at yesterday's council meeting regarding issues. Did you receive any? City
None
clerk?
for this evening, Mayor.
Nothing here. At this point, I don't see anyone. We can hang on for a second, but I don't see anyone. Do you, Mary?
I do not.
Okay. Again, I'll give those the telephone again, and then because they're able to speak after the meeting at the end, we'll have audience participation. That'll be 5 minutes. So I'm going to give it one more time. The numbers, which is 312-626-6799. Enter the meeting code of 886-2485-7291 and then pound. The city clerk will recognize you. We see none now. Again, you'll have an opportunity at the end of the meeting for audience participation. Mary, have we met the order? Are we good?
We have. As well, it is, I just got a text from communications. It is video streaming live from our city's website as well.
Okay, excellent. Okay. Anyone? So I don't see anyone.
No email.
Okay.
Right.
We will move on then to the budget hearings that we'll run through the different departments. We'll start off with the city manager in just a second here. This will be Matt Koppler's first budget in the city. He's been here since October, correct, Matt?
That is correct.
And not only is your first budget, but tough times, a tough time to put the budget together. But we appreciate your work, finances work, to put a good budget together, which is tough during these times. It is a little unusual. In the past, we have done 2 days. Matt probably can go a little bit more detail, but we're doing one now and probably coming back the first of the year with another one. And the reason for that was that we don't really have too much capital, or at least we're concerned about spending capital as we go forward until we understand the money situation, state share revenue, permits, etc. So we are being very prudent. We believe fiscally responsible and being diligent with your money to make sure we don't overspend, and we understand what money comes in and then reevaluate it. So not only is it on a Zoom, which is obviously totally different, but it's also a different way we've done it because we're being very careful and judicious in how we spend money till we understand how much money we really do have. And right now we don't totally know. So we're being careful with that. So this will be a one day budget hearing for the 2021. But again, we will meet again first of the year to try to get a better handle on how the money looks and how the state has done. And I think we all know the state's reported a little over 3 billion, I believe, in a shortfall. So they have issues, and usually when they have an issue, it flows down to local communities many times. So we're trying to be careful. So with that long-winded stuff, I'll kick it over to you, City Manager Koppler.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for taking some time this evening to go through the budget. Mayor Walby is very right on that there is a lot of changes going on right now, not only new city manager, but everything that's going on outside of our operations in terms of the COVID and flooding. These all have major impacts on our ability to provide services to the residents. But even internally, there's some changes. As you might notice, we have committed to start using the financial software budgeting module. So that kind of gave a little bit of a different look to the budget. And as we build that out over the next year, for next year's budget, you're going to see even more changes to what that looks like. And hopefully you're going to find it to be a lot more, or a lot easier to find information, as well as understand what the changes are in the budget from year to year. But we're in the process of change right now. And to that, not only using Munis budget module, but you also see that we're starting to move some of the different cost centers out of the general fund that really are internal service funds. And a good example is the IT operations. And historically, that's been in the general fund, but it really is an internal service fund under the definition of an internal service fund, since they provide services to multiple parts of our operation in the different funds. And that's going to lead ultimately to us being able to effectively cost out to each department and each fund what the actual cost of IT is going to be. So it's not to say that it hasn't been done the right way, but we're going to start looking at it from a service provision standpoint. And so those numbers are going to change. And we have to adequately reflect how that does. And in the bigger picture, we're going to be working on creating and separating our current utility fund into 3 separate enterprise funds. Again, this is to comply with not only the lawsuit that happened recently that we settled, but also to comply with the way the enterprise funds are supposed to be accounted for. That's not happening this year, but we're starting that transition towards that and being able to provide how those funds, share services and costs is going to be imperative work that we're going to be doing over the next 12 months. And you'll see that in next year's budget. The forecast, the financial forecast has been very difficult, as you're well aware, because of what's been going on with COVID-19 and the shutting down of the economy, and the state announcing that they have a $3 billion shortfall. But there has been, I think, some information that's been coming out that gives me hope that what we've put in the budget right now might be a good number. And the state, they'll go through different points and times of the year, and they have a consensus meeting of everyone in the Treasury to figure out what the estimates should be for the upcoming year. And last week, 2 weeks ago, I guess it was, they did have that consensus and actually started sharing their projections for the upcoming year. And I guess good planning on the finance department side. The estimates for that we had in the budget for the constitutional share that we get, which is about 4.77 million, I think, is in the budget. They actually estimated that number to be 4.8 million. So we're right on. Now, the downside to all this is that's today. We don't know what's going to happen over the next 5 to 6 months. And only once they start making those payments will we understand where their estimates are and where our estimates are. And we knew that going into the budget process and presenting it to you, that we had to create the budget in a way that provided maximum flexibility. One that we wouldn't have to get into a situation because we've committed all the areas that we could reduce very quickly without injuring the services that we provide. And so what we've done is, looking at what our revenue forecasts, we build out the kind of the day-to-day operational piece and put aside all the capital piece, knowing that even though those are very important projects that we want to undertake in the upcoming year, if it came down to it, we would rather sacrifice those for 1 year than get into a situation where we have to, lay people off, reduce staffing, cut the level of services to the resident, because we believe that's what really separates us from other cities, is the level and types of services that we're able to provide to our residents. Again, under the assumption that this is going to be a short-term issue, we don't want to take those major cuts that really don't make sense long-term and again, injure our ability to provide the services. So from the constitutional and the CVTRS perspective of state revenue, we feel very comfortable where we're at right now. We think that we have the flexibility, and depending upon what happens over the course of the next few months with the state budget, we're going to have even a better understanding. And on top of all that, there is indications that there will be money coming from the federal government down to the local governments as well. Again, today we have no idea what that is, but we do believe that any shortfalls that could happen within the state could be made up by federal funding that comes sometime later this year. But again, we can't budget based upon hope. We have to budget upon what we believe is going to happen. And so with the state revenues being the biggest piece of all this, we've put this budget together. I think the other big area that we have to keep a very careful watch on is the recreation revenues. And that's going to be the second, I guess, variable in the budget. And, right now the budget is predicated on about a $3.2 million revenue coming in through all of our different recreation. On the positive side, decreases in revenue from recreation can be made up in reductions of the level of services. For instance, not doing the summer recreation pro camp, for instance. We know we won't be getting that revenue, but we're also not going to be making that expenditure. So for the most part, there is a little bit of offset going on there. And so we feel, again, comfortable with the revenue that we have in there, knowing that there's going to be some offsets on the expenditure side, and knowing that we do have that capacity if we have to reduce the cost through reducing the capital side as well. The third area that is kind of a variable in my mind is on the building permit, zoning permit fees. I have to say that right now I don't foresee that those numbers taking a hit. Coming into the COVID crisis, we were actually there was a lot of building going on. And so that actually is going to carry us throughout this year to meet what the revenue projections were for the building permit side already. So you can see that we were well ahead of where we thought we would be. Even with a slight downturn, and we know that there are some projects that we were kind of counting on happening that at least have said right now that they're not going forward, I still feel comfortable that we won't see a large reduction. And so again, we've tried to meet a certain level of where we think we're going to be versus where we could be. And again, the flexibility comes in our ability not to actually go forward with capital projects. On the expenditure side, we budgeted based upon what the contracts have for increases for employees, which generally is a 2% increase. There's budgeted a slight increase. I think it's actually less than 1% of an increase in our healthcare costs. So that's good news going into the year as well. And as I said, that we placed most of the capital into contingency as the flexibility going forward should we see any major decreases in what we're projecting now within the revenue. So we feel pretty good where we stand with the way we've budgeted to provide you that flexibility. And, once the state's budget is put in place, we're going to have a pretty good understanding of where that is in relation to what our budget is, which means anytime after October 1st, we can probably start talking about the next phase of this budget. So I don't know if you had any questions on our revenue projections or how the budget is presented before we get started with the court.
Oh, we'll move on to the court. Judge and Andrea, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Good evening. Thanks for having us. Everything's kind of turned upside down.
It is.
Yeah. Well, it's always a pleasure to see you every time around this time each year, and it's a little bit different this year with the shutdown and the murder hornets and the flooding, and most of all, it's shocking not to see Pete here. It's not the same without Councilman Rubino, and I know it's hit us all hard. He's played such a vital role in what the court's been able to do. He's going to be greatly missed. A lot of people don't know, but he and Candace were probably the two real stimulating factors to get the court, the new construction with the court. They were able to convey all the information to council through the mayor, and they were instrumental in putting us here where we are now. And if we didn't do what we did then, we'd be in dire straits right now, because the technology we were able to use and utilize, and we got a lot of it from the state when we were building our court, we're utilizing today. And without that, we would be in dire, not only financial straits, but the services that we would be able to provide would be almost null. So his foresight, his hard work is something that I don't think can be overstated. And I hope the people of St. Clair Shores realize what a huge loss we did have. But we are optimistic for our future. And
Judge, let me just,
as
Jimmy,
down as we are right now, we're excited to go forward.
Judges, let me just say a couple words with, since you had that. You're right. Councilwoman Rusi and Councilman Rubino were a part of that whole subcommittee that brought this whole, the new building forward. And as I look in the budget here too, as you talked about how good the court has been, those two on the help, on the design, and then the council, we sit today on we're anticipating by the end of 2020, $430,000 in that building fund. So, I mean, we were prudent in what we did. We have money, we paid the bill, we've used the court building fund and that to fund it, and it hasn't come out of the taxpayer. So all of that is a tribute to how they built the whole thing and where we are today. But I also specifically would like to say, I knew Pete pretty well, and Judge, he was very fond of you. And I think you know it. He was very fond of you.
I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. And we coached our kids together in baseball and had a lot of interactions. And he was just everything you'd want a council person to be and a friend to be. So he's going to be sorely missed by the city and by me individually.
Yep. Okay. Sorry, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll let Andrea go forward and talk about some of the court's goals and accomplishments over the course of the past year.
Thank you, Judge. We've really been working hard toward and concentrating really on the service aspect, using technology, new technologies to better serve the public, of course, making it easier to use the courts is our goal, really, providing even education to the public. So some examples of what we've done over the past year really are we've ended jury checks and we're handing them cards as they leave, so they're paid immediately, and we're saving money in that aspect. The costs for check stock and the toner and everything else, when you compare it, we're saving money just on that. And people have it right away. They're leaving and they're done with the court as soon as they're done with jury service. So they have a smile on their face.
Yeah, I bet.
Online case reviews been instrumental for us, just answering questions. It gives a lot of information as to, you know, what is my balance or what is someone being charged with. We have text messaging reminders that we implemented through an actual free program. So it was free of cost, but through the state, actually, we took advantage of it. We signed up. We were one of the first courts to sign up for that. So that is really helping with getting people here for their hearings and reminding them, hey, you have a hearing or you have a probation appointment in just a couple days. It'll remind individuals 2 to 3 days out from their hearing date or appointment here with the court. And we anticipate having some statistics on that once we've had that implemented for a full year, but that'll be next year. Things of that nature. We have a lot more going on and a lot more ideas. We're moving towards paperless solutions. We're offering education as far as we're using the Polycom, the existing Polycom units. Judge Fratacangeli and I completed I don't want to call it a homework assignment, but it was a research project and a presentation for the state on a leadership program that we were chosen for. And we completed this project, and we basically put together a video for the courtrooms that we can also use for the hallways. And it educates the public on uses of the court. So answers just the basic question from where is the restroom located to what type of form someone would need for a certain case. So, and that can be viewed while people are waiting to go, to be called before the judge next. We'll have it in the hallways soon. We're working on different things for the hallway monitors, which we've also implemented this past year. So we have scrolling dockets in the hall area instead of the paper dockets hanging. So it's kind of like a airport feel. But with a friendly face at the door, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Great.
Andrea, I almost did forget about that. We were chosen by the state of Michigan as executive leaders in the community, and they invited us to participate in a leadership team development program. And we got our certificate of completion, and they passed our program. And they're actually using our project in a lot of other courts now as a pilot project. So we were pretty pleased with how that turned out, and we were honored by their invitation. So that was something pretty special over the course of the year.
Excellent. Questions?
And we also have our drug court continuing on. With great success on that. I know a few of the council persons have come to the graduation ceremonies. It really means a lot to our participants and helping the people in our community to ensure that there's no recidivism when it comes to drug problems that we face and alcohol. So that's been very well received and acknowledged by the state of Michigan as well. Andrea, do you want to continue?
Just to touch a little bit also, we are still actively pursuing collections through tax garnishments. We had filed 3,500, so the most we've ever filed this past year. So, and we're doing well as far as the percentages. It's anywhere really over the years, it's right around 40% return.
Great.
And obviously the challenges that we're facing for this next year are much like Matt indicated, the uncertainty of not knowing when we're going to be able to open, when we're going to go to full capacity. We've done everything we can utilizing technology to process cases through Zoom like we're doing tonight, and also via email and just written letters. We've resolved a lot of our caseload just by offering people the opportunity to plead minor traffic offenses and minor misdemeanors by mail. And we're going through our docket that way. We want to minimize the delay to the litigants the best we can, even given the restrictions. But we're still busy at the 40th District Court, even with the shutdown. Even though the doors are closed, we're taking full advantage of the technology that we have. And I'm sure that we're going to find that this is actually a blessing in disguise long term when it comes to the functionality of the court. these are some of the advancements that we've been trying to push statewide, and using our court as a leader in that regard for quite some time. And now all the courts are doing what we had started doing probably once this court was built. So it's good to see that other courts are coming aboard, and the state court administrator's office and the Supreme Court are going to be less hesitant to not allow technology to be used more frequently in the courts. And it's going to save us money in the long term. So we're pleased to see people coming around and other courts coming around to what we've been trying to do for quite some time.
Very good.
Wonderful.
Questions for the judge or Andrea? Ms. Rusi.
No question. Just want to thank Judge for the kind words and for the kind words about P. I know he was very proud of the work we were able to do on the new court building and gain that structure there in a way that was fiscally responsible for the residents. So thank you for the kind words, and thank you also the court over there for being a leader in embracing technology and some of the initiatives you guys have taken on. We're very, I know I'm very proud of our court here, and you guys have a great reputation.
Candace, those were a lot of 7 a.m. breakfast meetings with no breakfast.
I remember I was like, I just want, we were looking at some of remember the pictures that some of the other courts, and they were just these extravagant things with columns and everything. We said, no, we want it to be responsible. We want it to be nice, but we want it to be responsible. Just build us an orange box. And they did a very nice job building us a very nice orange box.
I think we also said it should be a nautical box. Something nautical. So I think it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, some nice windows and everything. It looks good. But yeah, no, it's funny. That was it doesn't seem that long ago, but that was a long time ago looking at those. But it was nice. And I know he was very honored to have a part in that. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vitale.
Yeah, obviously I think we can expect that traffic and parking revenue is going to be way down. Our probation revenues, those continuing on as normal?
Well, it's a new normal, but definitely a normal. Even if we do telephone reporting fees are still the same. There's been an inclination by the courts to shorten the duration of oversight to a certain extent. Testing, alcohol testing, drug testing is very difficult right now. So we're just trying to accommodate the situation. So I anticipate that the funds received through oversight fees are going to be consistent with a slight downturn, because I think we're going to have less people on probation. If the cases are lowered, if we have less people coming through the court, we're going to have less of a probation load. And also, a lot of the attorneys are asking for early termination of probation because of the situation. It's just harder for everyone to accomplish the terms of probation. And we also find that when they're all in lockdown, they're getting a lot less trouble too. So that kind of helps out.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Andrea.
Good luck with the rest of your hearings. Take care.
Thank you. Chief Woodcox, Police and BLEF.
Good evening. Today before you, there's a proposed budget for the police department, which looks quite a bit different than the budgets that we've proposed the last couple of years, but that's simply because we took Mr. Koppler's lead and decided to break out all our line items into more detail and get them into the appropriate categories. So you're going to see in the detail section that some money's been shifted around and some things have been increased, some have been decreased. But the biggest thing you may notice is at the bottom of the page, the total overall budget that we're asking for is $629,000 less than last year. I wish I could end it right there and say questions and move on. That doesn't tell the whole story. A big chunk of that is the purchase of new police cars. Those were traditionally part of our line items in the budget. Mr. Koppler has moved those over to the motor pool. So we do still intend to purchase hope to purchase some new police cars in the next fiscal year, but that is not reflected directly in our line item on the budgets. One big decrease that I can give credit to our people down in the records division, support services, Sergeant Hiralko and our fleet manager, Donna Manzo. That is the $160,000 that we had intended to spend this current fiscal year on new in-car cameras. That was all out to bid, or actually out for RFP. And we were going to be opening those shortly after the COVID crisis hit. So we immediately put that on hold. They did a whole bunch of homework on other options, not knowing what this was going to do to our budget. And I'm pleased to announce that we can comfortably push back the new in-car cameras, not just one fiscal year, but all the way to fiscal year 2020 without putting us in danger of totally losing our system. So there's $160,000 that we're able to defer for this coming fiscal year into 2022. If it turns out that the city needs that bit of cushion, we can wait that long, and that is due to the hard work of our people down in records.
Excellent.
You'll also notice a decrease in the line item for Sarisa, and all we can to keep a lid on portion of the Sarisa budget. So Mr. Koppler and I have been both on the Sarisa board, and we've kept a real good tight rein on their budget, so it doesn't impact our budget. But our reduction is because of a shift of a portion of our Sarisa costs to the fire department, simply to get a better handle on what the exact costs are for each and every thing that's going on in our department. So rather than the entire Sarisa budget coming out of the PD, most of it still comes out of the PD, but the fire is now picking up a share of it, just so we have a better handle on where the money is going and for what services. Those are the big things that jumped out at me, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions? Mr. Karen.
Thank you. First, Chief Woodcox, thanks for all the hard work that you guys have been doing. And actually, one thing in terms of budget that really does affect the court, we got their last monthly revenues for April, and basically we had $0 coming into the court because we're not writing tickets in that during this time. So, so that's kind of something else the court's going to have to really begin to deal with, is that there will be less ticket revenue basically going forward as this thing all gets passed and until people start really moving around again. The one question I had for you, in going through your comment on Sarisa, and perhaps when Chief Piper comes up, he can maybe address this, or Matt. I'm looking through the fire budget. I did not see the same line for Sarisa being added, or any number that had a significant increase in the fire budget to account for that. So we'll bring that up maybe with when Chief Piper is up. Maybe he can look and kind of figure out where he put that on his part of the budget there. But overall, in terms of yours, I know you're very good in terms of being fiscally responsible department and making those right decisions and spend the taxpayers' dollars very wisely over there. So thank you for that. And we can deal with the other, where the Sarisa other line item went to when Chief Piper is up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Frederick.
Yeah, Chief, nice job. I know that you guys do a lot of grant writing over there. So I'm just wondering, are there any grants that may not be reflected in here?
We don't have any grants that have been approved that are not reflected in there. Unfortunately, a lot of grants are need-based, and the city has done such a great job with our finances over the years. The need is down, and the officers have done such a great job over the years. Excuse me. We no longer qualify for some of the grants because our numbers are actually so good. Sergeants, even grant writing, grant searching, so to speak, and he's got 2 in the works right now. I don't want to spill the beans on those, but
no, that's fine.
It'd be really cool if we can get them.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Vitale.
Well, first of all, Chief, thank you for delivering us a budget that looks like you're in touch with our situation. So I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Basically, this isn't so much a question for the chief. It's more a question, I suppose, for Matt. It's just that the police department's the first one to make it obvious. What was the rationale for going from, I remember being on council when we had motor pool, then we took vehicle purchase out of motor pool. Now it seems like we're putting them back in. Is there a rationale behind that?
Well, I don't know what the rationale was to take it out of there. But the rationale to purchase it out of motor pool is that as part of it, so motor pool is an internal service fund. And a component of how we charge back to the different departments is the depreciation of equipment that is purchased through motor pool. And so you're effectively putting money, you're charging the different funds money for the vehicles that were purchased, and you're putting it into motor pool. And so in theory, after whatever the proper depreciation schedule is, you should have put aside enough money to replace that vehicle.
How are the actual purchases handled? Are the police still giving the same level of input?
Yeah. So quite honestly, this is more of a financial thing than it is an operational thing. It's where the money is. And so the responsibility of the purchase is still going to fall upon the department making the purchase.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, if it's more or less just a financial issue, there had to be a rationale behind moving it out. I understand you weren't here for that.
And I can speculate on that. My guess is that when you're making those purchases out of motor pool, it's not being captured within the cost center where it's coming from. And so there was probably a desire at some point to see all those expenditures. What is the complete cost of the police department? And that's one of the things that would be very easy to say, well, why don't we pay that out of here? But what should have happened is money should have been transferred from that internal service fund back into the general fund effectively. And you'd been able to accomplish the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Asha.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, thanks, Chief. I noticed you're going to hire 5 new police officers in 2020. Have you started the process yet, or?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we have 3 really good candidates. I'm very happy with. Right now, they're going through the background process. All 3 of them are senior, experienced officers with other agencies that are leaving their current solid employment to start a new career with us. And that says a lot for the people that they're coming to work with, that our men and women can attract outside people from other agencies to come work with us.
Great. That's good news. Thank you.
Welcome.
Chief, thanks a lot. Another good year for budget. We appreciate your hard work.
Yep. You're very welcome. Have a good night.
Just
hold on, Chief. Mr. Karen,
almost made it.
Almost.
No, actually, it's just a little more in the motor pool, which I do actually like in terms of what Matt did here. Because I remember when we had it before, like every vehicle came out of motor pool, but certain departments didn't use motor pool to buy vehicles every year. They made, I think fire was an example of that, to where we weren't going to have an ambulance or a truck every year coming out, where we got police vehicles where we do go through 4 or 5 of them every year. So I think this is smart of how the vehicles, to where we have departments that are going to have that fleet that has to get replenished a little bit every year, that is something that could get tracked in motor pool as an expense in and expense out. But other ones, like where we need an ambulance or an engine, yeah, that's treated more as a capital expense coming out of general fund. And that way we're not overcharging fire trying to build up funds for an ambulance, where we use, general fund in order to accomplish that goal. So I do like kind of how you kind of split that up like that, Matt. And Mary, if you can unmute Matt.
I'll leave him muted.
Yeah, I just make it longer. I actually was just talking to Laura about the Sarisa. And it looks like we may not have split it out as like we were supposed to. So we have to go back and take a look at that again in the numbers, and we may have to make that an amendment to do that split out. But
Between the police and fire?
yes.
Okay.
But I mean, the concept with the motor pool is really to create the ability to reduce the cost that you spend every year on equipment. And if we do it the right way and we set up a replacement schedule for everything and we start, replacing at the right time, there's going to be additional money that comes in from resale of vehicles. And so you start seeing over time, less money have to be committed from the different funds. And that's ultimately what our goal is going to be with this.
Sounds good. Chief Woodcox, thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Piper, unmute him, Mary.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Even before COVID hit, your fire department was doing quite a lot this year and accomplishing a lot of great things. What we prepared this year is the ability to continue on with the high level of service that the citizens have come to expect, with very minimal change in cost, hopefully. And we're looking to basically continue our program of what we've been doing, is maintaining, because unfortunately a lot of the things that the fire department has are a little bit more expensive, but it's better if we do a little bit over time rather than every 5 years making huge purchases. So we're kind of continuing all along that line, and also a little bit of changes to, not changes, but completing the process that we've had when it comes to maintaining our PPE, our fire bunker gear, and those kind of things into the proper standard, making sure those are certified every year. So I think we've accomplished that, and they keep it within the time. I think most of it for what you have for questions. Mr. Copper's holding up tab 17 for anything good there. I'm sure there's questions from the council, so I'll pretty much just refer back to you for that time.
Okay. And if I could add one
Yes,
I think big decision that still has to be made within the operations of the fire department is the inspector position. So we never really had a chance to close the loop on that because of canceling our Saturday meetings. And I guess I'm going to ask Laura this just to make sure, so she needs to be unmuted. And this is why I'll say this, the reason I'm asking, or the reason I have to ask this question, is why having a lot of spreadsheets are a bad thing, and just having one system where all the information's in is a good thing. With the inspector, I know Jamie is under the impression that the money is in this budget presentation for the upcoming year. Is that correct?
No, it is in the 1920 budget.
1920.
However, after our department meetings, it was not put in there.
Okay. So going into so what you have in front of you does not include funding for that position. And I think, again, we're going to be in a situation where we're pretty confident that the person that is the fire marshal is going to be retiring sometime next year. And
May? Is May the right day?
Yes, sir. May.
Okay. Continue. Sorry.
And so I think at the very least, we need to consider what we did in this past budget, which was fund a transition time period at the very least. So I'll throw that out there for your discussion on this, but just understand right now, there's no money in the budget for that position.
Was that transition period like 8 months?
It was 12 months, Mr. Mayor.
Actually, I think it was 9 months, but
Well, it was because of the budgetary stuff. He put in there a year. Part of it was last year's budget. Part of it was this year's budget.
Okay.
He was in the position for 12 months.
Okay. All right. I'll turn over to questions. Mr. Frederick.
So, Jamie, our chief, I know from a transition point of view, for budgetary reasons, probably important. But what is the actual ramp up time for a new fire marshal, especially somebody who has not been an inspector?
Right. Well, it is quite a lot of time. That's one of the reasons that we felt that 1 year was appropriate the last time. There is several months worth of training, almost 3 solid months of just physically being in the class off and on for the certifications and school knowledge that the person needs to be certified. And then there is a lot of time working with the current fire marshal. Learning how to go out and inspect a small building is pretty easy, but then you start getting into difficult areas when you're doing sprinkler certifications or working through plans review and all of that. And so not every situation comes up every single week. And that time period, while when you're looking at it on the front end, looks like a long time, I can tell you, even though Fire Marshal Desmondrill is fantastic, I think at the end of his 1 year, even he felt like, oh my gosh, I hope that was enough. Just the amount of information that comes and some of it, the infrequency that it does come, it takes quite a bit to get that person up to speed ultimately. And what would be the most useful for transition in there would be to eventually, or what we would like to do eventually, is to have that position full-time all the time. So there's always 2 people in there. There's a lot of other advantages like we talked about in the Saturday session for the workload and what they can accomplish in there. But the other thing that helps is anytime that the fire marshal is off or has to go for training, there's someone that's here, that transition is completely smooth by that person's always there. Sort of similar like we have in operations. We have a battalion chief and we have lieutenants who are always there. And if the battalion chief is off for a day, a lieutenant can step in real easy. When we don't have that in the inspector and in fire marshal positions, we find where, like in this position, in this instance that we're suggesting right now, you've got to cram an awful lot of institutional knowledge into 1 year to get that person ready to take over and then have their person that was their mentor and the person right above them to then just walk off into the sunset and not be around anymore. They take a lot of that institutional knowledge with them.
It worries me a little bit just because we've made a lot of progress over the last couple of years having 2 people there. And I'm a little disappointed that it wasn't actually in the numbers. I understand why we never really got to that, Matt, because I know we had talked about it numerous times. And I'm hoping that there's a way that we can transitionally put this back. I don't know, anybody have any ideas how we'd want to do this?
I'm not exactly sure. I would say, though, I'm a little concerned. I mean, the current one is, come May, will have been there 2.5 years.
Yes, right.
Right, and that's a little bit of a problem for me. If we have this rotation here, we're spending it and we're training people, and then they're there 2.5 years and they're gone. And we had talked a little bit at a Saturday session, Chief, of trying to maybe change the contract and get someone in there for 5 years and have some longevity. I mean, I don't think it's good for the community. Quite frankly, I don't think it's good for the fire department to have people. And I realize he's ready to retire, and God bless him for that. And there's no issues there. But to have that transition all the time, I think that's hard on the department. And I don't think it's great for the city. And it's financially, it's a little bit tough too.
Well, the good news in this particular situation, the person we still have an active list. The person who's next on the list has 10 years on the job. So they're going to be in place for a long time. And then the other people who applied this time around, everyone else that was interested had at least a decade or more left to go on the job. So I understand. I completely agree with what you're saying, Mayor. It is a little challenging at times when people aren't in super long, but I think that's a problem that's going to solve itself with the people who have been interested in the position. And 2, there are some other ways that we can, that we can work to maintain that as a long-term position. So I feel pretty confident that that will be less of a problem moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
So how do we add, I mean, what numbers are we looking for? I mean, the full year would be 160,000. So what are we looking at numbers wise to ramp somebody in here? Since if he's retiring in May, I mean, that's pretty quick out, you know?
For right now, because the monies are actually in this current year's budget, it wouldn't cost anything for the next 2 months because that money's there and just currently isn't being spent through salary savings.
Right.
And then the rest of it, just being a simple fireman, I know it's not as simple as just typing in some stuff on the Excel sheet, but I mean, that we put that in there, and then the body count and the funding for personnel would look the same for next fiscal year as it is this fiscal year, minus the contractual increase that's in there. But the numbers should comparatively from this year to next year should be almost identical.
Yeah, it'd be about $130,000 we'd have to add to the budget.
And that's moving, it's not adding the new positions, just training someone.
If that's the council's wish, yes. I mean, that would put them in there because it's a lieutenant level position. So it would put somebody in there where Mr. Frederick is right. It's about 160,000 with benefits and salary for the coming fiscal year. And then, which as the fire department would love to keep it, but if you said, no, you can only do it until the fire marshal retires, then it would stop in May-ish of next year. So you'd be talking about 9 months worth of salary for this coming fiscal year.
Which is the way we did it in the past.
Right, because that's the transition just happened in October last time. It'd be in May this time.
You didn't backfill that position?
I'm sorry, sir?
Well, if you move someone up, that means at the lower end, there becomes a position open. So you filled that position.
Correct.
So
is he currently a lieutenant?
The person who would get that job is currently a firefighter. He would get promoted to a lieutenant level position, and then we would hire a new 1-year firefighter. So there is some cost break there because there's a decent difference between a 1-year and a 5-year firefighter.
Right.
Current one, 5-year firefighter.
But man, it's not a long term. It's a transition while we train someone.
Right.
I mean, I get it. It's an extra body, but it's not long term.
Laura, do you want to address what you just said me?
Yeah, unmute her, Mary.
Just takes a minute. I'm looking at the pages, and what we took out was we had the transition numbers in there. But Jamie, I believe you are right. We do have Scott in that position as a full year for 2021 as well as 2020.
Okay.
So I believe they are in there. So I apologize that it is 160,000 for the inspector position. But can I ask this, Jamie, just to make sure? We have the fire inspector, the training officer, and the EMS coordinator, and a fire marshal. Those would all stay there, right?
Yes.
Okay, then the fire inspector is in there.
Okay, you got to explain it to me again. I don't. Are you telling me now there's 51 people in this budget?
I'll have to go back. Whoops.
So what I'm hearing is that the position was funded in the proposed budget. So we wouldn't have to add that 133,000.
Already in there.
Yeah.
Right.
We'd actually reduce what you have in there by the approximate $30,000.
Because it says 50 in here.
Yeah, on the staff summary page, it's got
it
goes down to 50.
So 50. Okay, I guess bottom line, I'm not totally sure. I don't get it.
Yeah, we need to check the numbers on it, but I guess the overall question is whether the money's in there or not right now. Do you want to have that position? And we'll hopefully have the answer to the money here in a few minutes.
What do you mean, do we want the position? Please explain, do I want the position? Do I want a permanent position going forward for the next so many years? Or do I want to train someone to fill in that position? That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, so all I'm recommending right now, because we haven't had that bigger discussion yet in finalizing whether you want to make that position permanent.
Okay.
And so I would only be recommending right now that you just fill this position in the temporary concept of getting them trained up to be the fire marshal. And again, that gives you, a whole year to have that discussion about the long-term nature of the fire inspector.
Okay. All right.
I mean, from my standpoint, the logic you used to do it the last time is the same logic here, unfortunately.
Okay.
So fund it for
Get it started.
What effectively would be 10 months-ish in next year's budget, because you're already going to have a couple, well, a little less than a month here. So maybe 11, but.
Okay.
Mr. Karen?
I'm good with that to start out with.
All right. I guess, to that, I am only interested in this being temporary as a transition. I'm not in favor of this as full-time going forward. I like the longevity we had with the previous fire marshal for this, the current one. I think that you get a lot of knowledge in the community, being in that for that long of a time. So it's good that the next person on deck has that chance at that longevity. Because I've got a bigger concern in terms of how many EMS drivers we actually have. As we've seen our run numbers having to go up each year, our overtimes had to go up each year, because if we have one or two people go out of the station, we're putting other people in on overtime. And I've got a concern long-term whether we can really keep that up. And when I'm looking at what we pay for, I can almost get 1.5 EMS drivers that I can for a fire inspector. And those are the ones in the EMS drivers, those are the ones that really the residents need, especially with the age demographic we have in our community. So, and I think going back to the confusion on the numbers, and totally appreciate the finance team trying to do this transition of getting us into a software. And that's also probably the problem of when you're dealing with spreadsheets versus software programs is, the number on there for fiscal year 21 for wages for the total count is just barely less than what we had in 2020. So even though the inspector count and the wages don't appear on the budget sheet, it looks like they're still in there, just from the way spreadsheets tend to work sometimes. So another reason why to get away from the spreadsheets and get into a software package that can kind of catch all that stuff for us. So, so I appreciate all the work finance has done trying to keep all this straight between data in multiple places. So I do appreciate that, but that's probably part of the confusion here. Thanks.
Thank you. Gracia?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I still think we need to get ready for the transition for the fire marshal. But when we backfill the other position, couldn't he be an EMS driver? Couldn't you bring one up, train him? Don't they normally get the training?
So that's how it would work. When this person moves up to the fire inspector, we would hire in another new firefighter medic, a 1-year firefighter, and they would come in from the bottom. Yes, sir. It's exactly how it works.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Both.
Ms. Rusi?
Thank you. In terms of the long-term position, I think I tend to side with Councilman Karen, but this was going to be a topic of conversation in person at the budget workshop that we were unfortunately unable to have because of COVID concerns. And I think even trying to have this type of conversation now over this format really showcases the limitations and deficiencies I think we've all expected for Zoom meetings when it comes time to actually debate something. So maybe we can we have another budget hearing scheduled. We'll have hopefully other budget workshops. Maybe we can get some more of the information that we were looking for coming out of the last budget workshop and continue that conversation at that venue in person, hopefully soon. And also, I emailed you, Matt, about this. I don't have a department staffing summary for this department for some reason in my book. So if you could email that to me, I can add that to my budget book. But for some reason, it's just not in here. But thank you. But yeah, let's talk about the long-term fire inspector position in person and upcoming meeting when we can get the answers to some of the questions I think that came out of the previous in-person budget workshop. Thank you.
Mr. Vitale.
Just going to back that up. I agree that this is something we should hash out in person, even if it needs to be in Civic Arena.
Sure. I agree. I think we got to hear that we move forward. We think the money's here. We move forward with it, Matt and Chief. It's temporary, and as it was before, and we need a further discussion. I mean, that's what we've talked about in the past, and just haven't gotten there. But we'll be funding it and getting the first lead, and then it'll be somewhat Matt and Chief to discuss whether we go for the permanent or not. So with that, I think we're good. Matt, you can follow up a little bit to make sure to clarify the numbers to make sure we have that.
Definitely will. Apologize for that.
I think I have it, but I'm not totally sure. So that would be great. Chief, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it.
On tab 18, we will do, so Mr. Copper doesn't need to put a sheet up. I said it, tab 18, Matt. Tab 18, community service, Chris Race. Hold on, Chris. Just a minute.
Muted.
You're muted, Chris. Hang on.
Okay. Gotcha. Good evening. This year's budget is pretty much status quo from last year. Mr. Koppler already talked about the finances. We are seeing activity picking back up. How that actually impacts the budget based on our forecast is yet to be seen. The one position that is different is we added the code enforcement supervisor back as a permanent employee as opposed to a contract employee. And if the budget is adopted that way, Mr. Blankenship will be made that code enforcement supervisor moved up from rehab coordinator currently. I put in the memo that Mr. Koppler put out regarding all of our contracted employees and whatnot. This is our final year for them. So code enforcement, building inspector services, all that, this is the last year of their contract, and we'll be bidding that out again for next year's contract. So that's kind of where we stand in terms of the overall budget and things to look forward to. And with that, if you have any other questions, I'd be glad to try and answer them for you.
There's a big hum just before. I mean, all of a sudden it went away. Thank you. I don't know what that was, but I don't know if anyone else could hear it. Mr. Kieran?
Yeah, Chris, just I guess to update the staffing summary. As I'm looking at it, I don't see the code enforcement supervisor as a full-time. And looking at the wage numbers, those match basically what's on the budget itself. So
there are two issues with it. One, we being the city manager's office was negotiating with PA on the salary, and there are some other positions they were discussing, which is actually lagging in our ability to. Our position is basically decided upon. So I talked to Matt about a week ago about coming up with a contract amendment for just that position while the other positions are discussed, which we're going to proceed with if council is in concurrence with us doing that. And it's not been inked, so we didn't want to actually put a number out there without the union actually signing off on what they've been discussing.
Right, but from your staffing point, you have a rehab coordinator. You don't have on the staffing a code enforcement supervisor back at full time. So is it going to be? Are we doing a 1-for-1 of we'll split up the rehab coordinator among other people in the department, or are we going to backfill that position as well?
There's, we're discussing two possible options. One is replacing the position because it is a block grant paid position, or potentially mixing those duties with the code enforcement supervisor. There's some challenges with that because they're actually in two different unions. So that could pose some other issues for us in negotiating that. So at this point, we're going to try to evaluate whether we need that position full time, and or whether there's a different option we can go with on the rehab coordinator.
Okay. So I guess, so before we approve budget, is the staffing summary going to get updated? Because
I think
because I don't think there's a disagreement to going back to a full-time code enforcement supervisor.
If council's in concurrence with that, I'm sure Mr. Koppler would wrap that up and have that for the final budget adoption in June with the final numbers in it.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I concur with Mr. Karen. I agree. I think that's a great way to go.
And I think Kenny's been doing a great job for us. He's been in a temporary upgrade position for a number of months now while we've been doing this. And he's also been helping with the flood fighting as well.
Yep.
So I'm happy with the direction we're going, and I think he'll serve the community well.
Great. Okay. And then Chris, if you could, I sent yourself and Liz email earlier in terms of explaining CDBG funds that we have coming in. You know, we split it up multiple places in the budget. And the one thing I didn't see was line items within the senior center budget to basically pay for the loan payment. That's also a part of their debt service. But then also the services, to where we give a chunk of money out of the block grant to the senior center that they use to pay for supplies that qualify. And so could you explain in terms of how that is broken up? Because I think your response was the senior center supplies is actually part of the services in your budget, you know, versus being a part of the senior center budget.
Well, it's part of the block grant budget in terms of the cap. And so if I'm not mistaken, Laura would show that as revenue out of block grant to reimburse basically the senior center. The numbers aren't always as clean with block grant because we have program income that comes in during the year, and then we have the allocation that comes in. And so they don't align necessarily with our budget. So the max that we can use out of block grant is the fixed rate that the Fed set for services versus capital and other products. And so the numbers are skewed this year because we haven't had enough takers on our rehab program. So we have an entire year of unused rehab money that we're going to be moving to streets, which was, I believe it was $250 just for last year's numbers. And we have to spend that money timely. Otherwise we get penalized by the government for holding on to that money. So we've been doing some manipulation with that money to get it spent timely, as well as block grant has not had a final budget approved yet because we haven't been able to have the public hearing. So there's going to be a little lag in the exact numbers based on what the feds give us in terms of that dollar and getting it approved. But we plan on following the same that we've done in the past, maximizing the amount of the senior center, as well as the service groups, and then balancing the rest out in streets and infrastructure.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Rusi.
Do you know why we're not having enough applicants for the rehab money? Is it just the process is kind of onerous? Is it restrictive? Or do people just not know about it? I mean, I understand with the corona issues now why, you know, people wouldn't be applying, but previously, do you have any insight as to why you think people aren't availing themselves of that?
The exact answer to that, I don't know. I would say one thing that I would surmise is an issue is there's a requirement that you have to do lead testing on the facility, and regardless what the project is. And that adds a lot of cost to the project. And so that's an issue. And then there's the projects that people want versus the projects they actually need. So some people want a kitchen, but they need a roof. And so I think those are kind of some of the impediments, but I think really some of the lead paint issues and whatnot that can be quite costly on some of these homes adds a significant cost and pretty much an inconvenience to the homeowner potentially, depending on where that lead is at.
Okay, and those are requirements the federal government puts on us for the allocation and use of these loans. That's not anything we have anything to do with, correct? We're just administering the program. Okay, thank you.
And we do actively seek. I've had Kenny go down streets where I've seen homes that need work, and I would assume they would qualify, or maybe that's why it's not done. So we've been trying to spend the money. So we'll use this as a commercial. If you're a person that could use some money, can qualify, give us a call and we can see if we can help them out.
Now, maybe we can get a Facebook post and maybe a mention in the newsletter, things like that, and use some of the media we have available to help spread the word a little bit, because I know there's definitely the need out there, but maybe it's just a matter we can do a little bit better getting the word out too. Thank you.
I'll disagree with you. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Race, thank you.
All right, thanks.
DPW tabs 19, 33 through 36 and 38. Utility fund, motor pool, street. Brian Babcock.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Brian Babcock with the Department of Public Works. And there are a few different departments here. I guess Mr. May probably just want to go through one by one at a time.
Sure.
The first department is DPW admin on tab 19. And really not as much has changed in this department. I am happy to announce that we have a new employee that has started in our office a few weeks back, and she's doing a great job. She's a resident of the city, and we're happy to have her join us. So she is part of this department. The other, I guess, major change, there is no capital in this year's budget. Last year we had the material storage building, which I'm happy to say is built. And it's ready. We're using it every day. In fact, on Monday, it started to be our sandbag filling center. So we're able to store sand and keep it dry, which really helps with the production of making the sandbags. So that's been really nice to have a place to store the sand and to protect the sandbags that we've already made. So that project is done. I think that's the only major change in this department. If there's any questions.
Okay. Keep going.
The next department is sanitation, which is under tab 31. And surprisingly, time flies. We are in our 8th and final year with GFL for garbage collection. So this fiscal year 2021, the rates to collect the garbage and also to haul and dispose of has gone up 3%, and that's per the original bid that was put out 8 years ago. So that I think that's really the only major change in this department. Any questions?
No, well, I just have a comment. I mean, it'll fall on myself here and work with Mr. Kopfler and Mr. Babcock to get a subcommittee going so that we did the last 8 years ago. My gosh, that is a long time ago. 7 years ago, it went fast, and put that subcommittee together, because I think when we did it the last time, I think we picked them by January, February in that time frame. So then there was time to, if there is a new vendor, that has time to get up. So we'll put that together so that we can get out there. I know that this is not for the budget, but for maybe Mr. Kopfler, I don't know if other communities, I think Roseville had said they were going to be bidding at the same time. I don't know, something to think about, whether we can maybe work with several other communities as a consortium. I don't know if that's possible or not, or we were interested in that, but something maybe to look at too.
Yeah, definitely.
Ms. Rusi?
And look at, but keeping in mind though that we do have different requirements, expectations. Sometimes other communities, like think about the garbage can color issue.
Yep.
We did that last time. So, we want to save money if we can, but we also need to keep in mind, we do like to be in control of the contract too, and some of the terms, versus giving away some of our ability to control performance under that to another community with us. You know what I mean?
I do.
Something to explore, but keep in mind that we like to be able to control the performance ourselves.
Sure, we want to keep the standards high.
Correct.
At the same time, it's a shrinking market. So there's the last couple of bids around sometimes come in with two. So this is just for I guess for the public to say there's just there's not a lot of them out there, and so it's we had 4 last time, as I recall, but I'm not sure we'll get that this time.
Right, and I'm not sure if joining with another community making the contract bigger with more homes to pick up for would make it more desirable. I think we would maybe potentially reduce the pool of potential companies who can service a larger type of community then with more households like that. Just some concerns to think about first time hearing this.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Karen?
Yeah. So I think the committee for this year is yourself, Mayor, myself, and Councilman Asia, that you already had selected for that prior to all the COVID stuff happening.
Yeah,
I know one of the other challenges we're going to have. Yeah, exactly. I think one of the other challenges we're going to have is the recycling market. That's going to be a problem. I know prior to all this happening, GFL had sent out a kind of an invite because they went and actually bought their own recycling sorting plant down in Huron Township, just down in southern Wayne County, basically. So I think once people are actually out and start moving around again, it might be good for us to actually go pay them a visit just to kind of see what they have there. I think they did the recycling tour of the facility over in Groesbeck, and that was still a lot of hand sorting that was going on. So it'd be interesting to see if they've actually gotten into any type of real automated sorting of recyclables that we have. But otherwise, we could be seeing a very large increase to still be providing that service for our residents going forward.
And John, just to add to that is the closure of Detroit incinerator may very well impact the per tonnage that we now ship, right? So that's a change compared to 7 years ago.
Yep.
So
okay, thank you.
A lot out there. Thank you, Mr. McCallie.
It's kind of turned into a garbage contract discussion, and maybe that's well. When would we have our next budget discussion meeting? Because there are a lot of issues I'd like to raise on that. That's not going to probably be in time for this, is it?
I don't understand your question exactly. The next budget probably be in January.
Yeah, by which point the garbage contract will have been negotiated.
I think Chris wants a study session. It doesn't have to be a budget, or making this a topic for a study session. It doesn't necessarily have to be a budget workshop, correct, Chris? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, because there's a lot of things here I think that can affect our pricing.
Okay.
Are we going to go to a automated collection system? That might offer a great potential for savings. A lot of cities are doing that.
Glad to put that onto a study session on a Monday.
I think we pick up garbage from apartment complexes, and I don't know too many cities that do that. So I see a lot of potential cost savings here that we should at least be brainstorming on.
No problem. Okay, Mr. Babcock.
Okay, the next department is the Storm Sewer Department, which is tab number 33. And there has been some significant changes in this department because of the stormwater lawsuit. First being that we have moved the laborers that were budgeted in this department to our sanitary sewer budget. The concrete repairs, we have reduced that to really only do this year the most critical repairs that are needed. We scaled down that budget. We had proposed this year to put in a pump station on Benjamin Street at Lake St. Clair to replace an above ground, noisy gas powered one that we have out there. And we decided to postpone that project. We also took out the TV and cleaning and repairs of storm sewers for this year. And another point I wanted to bring up was last year, you'll see that the majority of the purchases and that we made were actually under an account that we had added last year because of the flooding, which is the high water emergency expenses line item. And we are back at it again this year with the flooding. So it's going to be another doozy of a summer, I think. But that's the storm sewer department. I guess I'll just announce under this department that we did have in the previous budget a pump station that was going to be installed on Jefferson at Lont Street. And Chris has lined up a contractor, and we met with them last week, and he's ready to go and put the shovel in the ground here within the next couple of weeks. So that will help with the flooding that we have there at that area. So we're very excited for that to get started.
That's good news.
Any questions under storm sewer?
Mr. Frederick.
Yeah, hey, Brian, just, this is in general for all DPW. Where are you at with retirements and replacements? How many do you think you have this year?
We just had an employee retire, and we're in the transition now. Someone will probably move in. It was actually our street sweeper, Dean, that retired this year. So
no, not Dean.
We're very happy for him, but that street sweeper is just sitting there waiting for its new driver. So we're hoping to fill that soon, and then we'll be making a hire from the outside to fill that vacancy. But that, other than that, we've hired 2 new employees within the last probably 3 months, and so we're almost at full capacity.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Keep going, Brian.
The next department is the water department on tab 34. The most expensive, biggest item on this budget is the cost of purchasing water from the Great Lakes Water Authority. The effective commodity water rate increase this year from them is 4.3%. New to this budget is a $1 million line item for the lead service line replacement program, which we are hoping to get started here real soon. We also have some water main projects that are going to be starting real soon that will be replacing the lead service lines, like we talked about last night. Under the water department, the 10-mile water storage reservoir, we're in the 3rd year of a 5-year contract that we had to paint and do all the maintenance on that reservoir. We have 6 water main replacement projects that is part of this budget. And another item that we had talked about putting in this budget, but we're hoping to bring it to you sooner than July 1. We're looking to get a vac trailer that we'll be able to do lead service line confirmations with in-house with our employees. We've been contracting it out a little bit, and we see that there's going to be an opportunity for us to do it in-house and have some savings. So hopefully at one of the meetings in June, we'll be presenting that to you. That's all I had for water. Any questions?
Questions? Sanitary?
Number 35, tab 35 is sanitary sewer. The cost to treat our sewage, the rate, the commodity rate increase for that is 2.6%. And within this budget, we have budgeted to TV and clean our sanitary sewers, a section of the city. We have $300,000 budgeted for that and $400,000 to make actual repairs to the sewers. So that will be a good thing to get done this year. Any questions on sanitary sewer?
Mr. Karen?
Yeah, Brian, on what you just mentioned in terms of the cammering and the repairs, about how much of the city do you think that covers?
I think we're going to get maybe 1/8 of the city with that. That's what our thought was, as every 8 to 10 years, get through all the sewers in the city, televise and clean them, and evaluate them for what repairs are needed.
Okay. And we're confident that will keep us ahead of the past issues we had going back 2016, keep ahead of tree roots and broken lines and things like that about once every 8 years?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Next one.
The next department is the motor pool department, tab 36, and there really is no changes there. in that department. And I just couldn't be more proud of the two mechanics that we do have working and all the equipment that they repair. They do a great job. So any questions on motor pool?
Ryan, thank you. Oh, library.
Streets, Mayor, streets.
Sorry, streets.
38.
For the streets department, we have added a line item this year in the amount of $150,000, and that's to do tree removals. We had we have three city arborists, and two of the three, one moved up to a supervisor position and one retired. So we have fallen behind someone on our tree removals. We made new hires and we're training them, but we can't just throw them up in a tree and be unsafe. So we're training these new employees. This will help us get caught up and get some of these unsafe and dying trees cut down quickly. We recently just bid out and council awarded a project to do a tree removal. I think it was about 25, 27 trees, somewhere in that neighborhood. And that contractor is set to begin within the next couple of weeks, I think. So we added that line item for this upcoming budget. We do have another USDA, U.S. Forest Service tree planting grant in the amount of $100,000. So we'll be, as soon as we're able to bid this work out, we will be planting probably around 500 trees with that grant.
Nice.
Hopefully that will start in the fall. We had intended on starting that this spring, but a lot of the nurseries were shut down and not operating. So it wasn't a good time, or we weren't even able to buy trees at that time. So a couple of local road paving projects. We have Bestie and Hughes in this budget. And for the block grant paving, we have Meyer Street. Yeah. And a big project for this coming budget also is 12 Mile Road. There's going to be some pavement repairs done to our section of 12 Mile, which is between Harper and Jefferson. And it's greatly needed. The joints are falling apart out there. So that'll be good to get that done. Any questions on the streets department?
Before I go to Mr. Karen, when you say that the trees, will we totally caught up?
Will we be totally caught up?
Yes.
With this money? I'll have to get back to you on how much I think we can get done with this $150,000 in this budget.
Okay. All right. Mr. Karen.
Thank you. I think this is more of a accounting question. So I think either added just last year or this year, but now we've got three separate street funds between municipal streets, major streets, and local streets. So Laura, could you kind of explain the rationale between the three different budget ones that we've got? Because considering municipal streets, basically the two biggest expenses are street lights we know of, but the other one is just contribution to another fund, which is just $1 million transfer over to locals.
Correct. We actually, we've always had these three funds. However, when we are trying to give you reports out of Munis and not put them, have to go through a lot of, to put them all together, really this is how they are in the general ledger. Okay. There's the three separate funds. I understand we normally would have that cover sheet that would show you side by side these funds. However, that is because we had all of these tabs that would link in the old budget system. So we're still trying to figure out if there is a way that through some of our reporting that we can give you that. But right now, we actually are showing it as the three separate funds.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation of that. And the other question I have is, in terms of streets is heavily reliant on Act 51 funds from the state, which we know that's going to also be affected, just like we're afraid of our revenue sharing for the general fund's going to be affected. People haven't been driving around for the last 2 months. That's where the bulk of the money for Act 51 revenues come from. So do we have enough cushion in street funds today to not only fund the projects that we have, but then also to make sure that we've got the funding there for winter maintenance and that to get us through the entire year, even though that's about $1 million, 2 of the total budget that we spend on maintenance projects there, but I'm assuming we have enough of a fund balance there.
Go ahead, Laura.
Oh, okay. I was waiting to see if you were going to take it or if I was taking it.
Go ahead.
We do have a nice fund balance in the streets that we can get through that. Even though on the state shared, they kind of have given us some guidelines. The latest is they still have not given us an update on how the Act 51 will be affected, except that it will be affected. So we are watching the state website, and actually we're getting information from MML, from our accountants, Yo and Yo, on updating. Anytime the Treasury comes up with something, they send us. So as soon as we can see something on the website, we'll be able to figure out how we are doing on that. And of course, I guess we'd have to look at that in next year if we don't receive what we're expecting.
And so one of the things that we did in this year's budget, or for next year's budget, is normally we would make a transfer from effectively the major roads to the local roads. And that's usually, I don't know exactly what that number is, about $1 million-ish?
It's a couple million.
Couple million, okay. We didn't make that transfer this year to provide flexibility, but we have upwards of $6 million right now between the two funds. So we feel comfortable that, any shortfalls that could happen in between now and when we make that transfer, when we see exactly what the revenues are going to be, we should be covered by.
Okay, thank you.
That transfer, again, will happen once, we get back together again to finish up the budget.
Okay.
Other questions? Brian, thank you. He's on mute, so okay, we'll thank Brian. We'll move to library, tab 30. Good evening, Rosemary.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. There are several minor changes in this year's budget. The first one is in services, 810 services. When we met with the finance department, we talked about our capital, and in our capital, we have is where we purchase all our materials, our book budget. And we were taking materials, digital materials from that budget. And so it was decided that it was going to be a service. So we put those funds into 810 for our digital resources. So our ebooks. So differentiating from print and non-print. So we have put that into services. The second change is in capital, and we just added 2 minor items that we thought needed to be taken care of. One is to replace the redwood siding along the outside of the building. And the second item was we have what we call a magazine room that many years ago we stored all the newspapers and magazines and periodicals in that room. We now use it for storage and for other things, but the shelving in that room is over 50 years old. So it's not, a lot of it is not safe. So it was our hope to remove all of that and replace that in there. And the third change that was a union negotiated contract that's not reflected in my staffing is I have a new librarian, one that was hired. My 2 librarian ones will be promoted as of July 1st to librarians 2. The senior person will go at the top of librarian 2, and the less senior person will begin the pay at librarian 2. So those are some of the changes that are different from last year's budget.
Okay. Questions for Rosemary? Mr. Frederick.
Yeah, Rosemary, I miss you. So
Is this where I say I miss you more?
there you go. So, I mean, the question I was going to ask you, I don't think you have an answer to, and that is, you know, with the building closed down, what's going on with the moisture in that building?
Well, it's not hot. So actually our humidity is fine, but we haven't gone into the hot part of the season yet.
Okay.
But it's perfect at this moment.
All right. Well,
right where it's supposed to be.
Good. All right. Thanks. Nice job.
Ms. Rusi.
Thank you. Hey, Rosemary. Question. We don't know when we'll be able to open up the library again. That was in the governor's order. Same with bars and restaurants. It was included. Libraries, museums, everything. And I don't think anyone really knows what the future is going to hold and when we can open, what that's going to look like in terms of how we can operate. Is there any thoughts about having, I know one of the goals for this year is create, develop, and maintain a social media presence, which I'm really excited about, just given the ability to engage in more outreach via, you know, meeting people where they already are, which is Facebook, Twitter, things like that. Are there any thoughts that if we're not able to hold the summer reading program, which I know a lot of kids in the city participate in, to encourage them to read books over the summer, is there any thought about making this available via any sort of online, virtual type thing?
There are plans going on right now to see how we can facilitate an online summer reading club. So
that would be wonderful. I know the kids really look forward to that every year, and having it in whatever capacity we're able to do, I think would be appreciated by our residents.
Right, it is being worked on. Another thing that we're in the process of working on is curbside service, so that when staff can come back in the building, because we have thousands of items that are being held and need to be processed, we'll work in a way that people will be able to come and pick up items curbside.
I mean, one of the things I think has been most frustrating for me is knowing that we have a lot of people off of work who have a lot of time on their hands, or maybe wanting to entertain themselves, learn a new skill. We have kids out of school who are expected to continue their education from a home capacity. We have a building full of taxpayer-funded resources, and we're unable to get those taxpayer-funded resources into the hands of people who right now need them more than ever. And that's really frustrating. So hopefully they start operating in some way, because there's a lot of people out there who want and need these materials who, you know, right now they could go to Walmart and buy a book with a very limited selection available for a lot of money, but they can't go and get a book they already paid for through their taxes. Well, that's a shame.
The digital services have increased greatly. So I believe there were probably 2,600 items checked out just in Overdrive for our audio or ebooks last month. So people are going online. They are able to get some of those resources digitally.
That's very good. And that's something that once we develop a social media presence for the library itself, we can utilize that to promote those resources. And I mean, right now we do have a pretty robust Facebook page, and people share things. Maybe we can get some information about some of the digital resources available and, highlight those, especially given we don't know how the library is going to operate in the coming months. Let people know what's available, that we do have these available for them to take advantage of. And I was excited to see a goal, explore the renovation of the youth services room in the budget. So looking forward to learning more about that. That room looks the same as when I was a youth checking out books when I was young. So I'm excited. Yeah.
I'm hoping that not in 21 budget, but in 22 budget, we will be able to have a little bit of money to hire a contractor that will be able to give us an idea of what can be done and the cost that would be associated with that. And perhaps state and federal funds would help to renovate that room.
I'm looking forward to learning more and seeing what you guys have in mind. So thank you.
Mr. Karen.
Thank you. Hey, Rosemary. Prior to the budget hearings, I sent out a whole list of questions. One of the things I asked you is that, we've have in each of the budget a money for materials, and kind of asked of how that's been spent. You gave a great detailed breakdown of the resources that you're spending that money on to add to the collection. So I just want to greatly appreciate going through and putting that detailed work in to give us a better understanding of what is that part of the budget always going to, because books aren't big purchases. You're never going to buy a $10,000 book, so we never see it because it's part of your job to manage that, and greatly appreciate the great job that you're doing. And we all hope the library is open again soon, because if Ron doesn't have library announcements every meeting, he goes crazy.
Our meetings have been so short lately.
Literally, I don't know if you saw Rosemary, but one day he misplaced them. It was a minor emergency at our end of the table until he found them in that. So he needs his library announcements every meeting. But great job. Thank you.
It's a great job. So thank you.
Thank you. Parks and Rec, tabs 20 through 28. Henry Bowman. Thank you, Rosemary.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. We have the first one up is Parks Administration. The only thing we don't have this year that we're not doing next year is our Hall of Fame. But that went over pretty well, and looking forward to the next one at this point. But any questions?
No.
Okay. Next one up is recreation. As it was mentioned, we have canceled our day camp and playground program, so we'll be seeing some savings there. We are looking at doing a virtual playground summer camp type program. We're working on that information, and really proud of the girls that are working on this right now. I think we're going to have something that's going to be attractive for our residents using. So
that's great, Henry.
Yeah, it's really good.
Any other questions?
Mr. Karen.
Yeah, Henry, just want to be a little, we're going to go ahead in a little uncertain times, especially as Matt talked about at the very beginning of the meeting when it comes to Parks and Recreation revenues and expenses. And I just kind of want to coach you guys on how you just kind of phrase it. Yeah, since we're not having the program, there's going to be a savings, where I think in reality, the program was costing more than the revenue was coming in, which is appropriate. That tax dollars do offset some of the expenses within Parks and Recreation. So just kind of want to be careful with the vernacular of, as we can't offer certain programs, doesn't mean it really saves money in the budget in that, because that it may not be a direct offset in there. So just kind of want to coach you on the verbiage there.
Okay.
All right. Next up is Civic Arena. The disappointing thing that we're going through right now with the governor's speeches is never, ever do they talk about indoor recreation. And it's very hard. We've had to read in between the lines, and most of everything on here right now is a status quo type budget. Everything is running pretty well. One of our capital improvements was going to be some replacement of some cooling equipment that was underneath the floor that we're going to have to do, that I'll be bringing up to council for your approval sometime here right after July 1st. It should be.
We didn't catch any of that. We didn't catch it.
His video feed is going in and out.
Yeah.
Was that really? I'm sorry. Do you hear me now pretty well?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's pretty much a status quo. We don't know how we're doing, we don't know when the governor is gonna release indoor recreation, or at least let us start doing things as Learn to Skate or the figure skating program to get that going again, even before hockey, but we're hopefully soon. And then the other thing is that we possibly have, we're gonna need to do some floor repair that's not gonna be able to wait. It's gonna run about $17,000, some heating and cooling issues that we had it in our capital. So that's one thing that we're gonna have to do, or it's gonna be a much, much bigger expense. So, any questions?
Which arena is that in?
I think that's in the gardens.
Mr. Vitale.
How do we get the governor's approval to open something she didn't close?
Didn't close, I thought she closed all indoor recreation.
Wasn't it just said that you're just reading in between the lines in terms of what can open and what can't?
Well, what can open, she hasn't made any indications of indoor recreation when it can open. But she originally closed all indoor recreation centers.
Well, that was specifically closed?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Frederick?
Yeah, Henry, along those lines, I don't know if you've talked to Kevin Hertel, but he's on a committee that's putting together some of the stuff that's, not listed, like dance, or is a dance studio, is it a gym, is it a classroom? So they're working on a list of those things. You may want to just give him a jingle, make sure that all of our stuff is on his radar. It probably is, but it doesn't hurt to give him a jingle.
Yes, sir. And I know USA Hockey has been very big in coming up with ideas on reopening also.
Yeah, good.
Mark?
Mark? Same type of thing at this point. It's just pretty much status quo. Myself and Tommy Mel is here to answer any questions you may have.
Activity Center?
Senior Activity Center, I'm hoping that Matt Hubinski will like you to say hi to Matt. He's on your screen right now. I don't know if he's going to turn on. But,
I know, I can't hear you.
At this point.
Maybe we can hear Matt.
But he's
Good evening, everybody.
Hey,
Matt.
There he is.
Well, you're good.
Our new senior
take over.
coordinator.
You can take over for Henry because we don't even know what he's saying.
We should be on the same connection, but thank you for having me here tonight. Henry and I went over everything, all the numbers, and really looking forward to being in this position and taking really good care of our seniors in the city. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks for showing up.
Welcome, man.
Thank you.
John Karen.
Yeah. Hey, Matt. Good to at least see you virtually. I know we emailed a couple of times already. Yeah, definitely. You've got probably of all the Parks and Rec departments, one of the biggest challenges of how we can navigate to get the senior center open again safely for probably the most at-risk population in terms of what we're dealing with COVID. So it's good to have you on board. We'll talk in terms of just some of the things that have been going on to kind of help you get up to speed with the work I've done on the senior advisory committee that we have set up over there, and hopefully we can get that group meeting together soon as well, so you can meet that group.
That'd be wonderful.
Seniors that put you got a lot of great volunteers that you're going to be meeting at the senior center here once we can get back up and running. So thank you for being on board.
Thank you, John.
Great. All right. Kite Monroe.
Kite Monroe, same type of program. It's status quo, our second year of this budget. Is there, any questions regarding?
Aquatics?
Okay, aquatics, I'm hoping that, Riley Shea is gonna pop in here. He is our new, aquatics and pool supervisor, or harbor supervisor. There's Riley right where, Matt was. And,
Evening, everyone.
Evening.
And it's pretty much a status quo budget. Riley's taken on a big challenge, just came on a couple of months ago, doing a wonderful job, being very active. Any questions?
Mr. Asha?
How's that slide coming at the pool?
Now, you know, they've been doing some work down there. I believe the quoting process is done. You know, Brandon Abel, our great maintenance worker from Civic Arena, has been down there with his crew removing and welding rusted out parts that are, you know, far from acceptable in the state's eyes. We've also, you know, tackled some rust removal and are looking at covering up some new spots, but we are doing our absolute best to restore, you know, what was once, you know, a great structure. And obviously the years have been hard on it. But that's no excuse for us to slack off. So
no, let's keep working on it. I mean, there's no other problems with the pool. You need it. That's running good. The filters, the pool, cement works good all the way around.
to my knowledge, yes.
Okay, great.
We will have it hopefully filled by mid-June. Ideally, you know, a possible public opening in July, depending on how things develop. But we are going to be prepared for that.
So you think July, August?
No, July.
That's what we're hoping for.
Swim lessons for the little kids?
Gotta get it.
Now, we haven't fully discussed that yet, but with the playground program being called off for the summer through Parks and Recreation, I feel similarly that providing the large classes is something that we may not be able to do, but individual private lessons are something that we should be able to accommodate, and I look forward to trying to expand the footprint of that program.
Okay, great work.
Thank you very much.
Henry? Do
Yes, sir.
Do you have any idea of what's going on with the boat slip rentals? I mean, a lot of the marina behind City Hall there, because of the pool and all that. I know we usually do real well there. How are we doing overall?
Well, the canal is totally sold out.
Okay.
And we're selling more and more slips throughout the marina right now. We're actually not doing too bad. Probably one of the biggest issues right now is not people getting out, you know, into the lake or whatever, they're getting their boats into the slips, is getting their boats out of storage. And a lot of the storage workers are not essential workers.
Didn't think about that. Yeah.
Yep. So it's actually going pretty well. I'm pretty impressed. We're seeing new customers. We're bringing them in. So.
All right. Great. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Water slide.
Yep, same type of situation. Riley talked about the slide already a little bit. Once again, it's a status quo type of budget. So if there's anything we can answer for you, we're here.
Mr. Karen.
Yeah, Riley, just welcome aboard as well. You know, just one thing to kind of keep a heads up on in terms of the slide, the issues we had in the past is, you know, state inspectors come out. If they find any major issues, we need to be aware of it because we need to be looking ahead budget wise, what's going on. So they see things, make sure you get those to Henry so you can decide what, you know, what needs to get up to us, because we've had an issue with that in the past and don't want to see any repeats of that. So, because especially with age of the structure, you know, inspector is going to be looking pretty hard at it, but it's great that Brandon and his team is out there helping you to get that prepped, and, you know, and hopefully the circumstance will be able to use it this year with everything that's going on. So, but welcome aboard.
Thank you again. And yeah, we will, we're going to make sure that we stay on top of that every single day.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Riley. No other questions?
Golf.
Next up is the golf course. And I do have, I have, where, but
Going there.
what's that?
We didn't hear a word you said, Henry, so I asked Rob how it was going.
Rob's muted.
Hey everybody, how are you?
Hey Rob.
It's been a tough month getting everything together with all the new rules and regulations and how quickly they change, but we're conforming. Number one thing is safety of the customers and employees, and you know, I'm really proud of my staff, most of who are seniors who selflessly just came back and had no qualms about going to work to make sure people could play golf. So that's really nice. We're in the process of getting some barriers built to go between the seats on the golf carts. That'll allow us to put 2 people in a cart going forward, get us back to our normal tee time setup. We've had to spread them out recently because we can only put 1 person in a cart. As soon as we get those dividers in, we'll get back to what we used to do.
Questions?
Dividers, huh? Yeah.
Rob, are you going to be selling advertising on those those between people?
We'll have to see about that, Mr. Fredericks.
Okay. I see Sal's laughing too over there. All right.
Mr. Karen?
Hey, just kind of refresh my memory in terms of the cart path replacement. Was that the money that we, as we approved that contract a couple months ago or something like that, right? The money that went into that, was that from fiscal year 19 and 20 and not any from this year? Were we carrying over like 2 years of the last 2 budgets for that?
Oh. Wasn't it 1 year and then this year?
I believe that's correct.
Correct. Yeah. All right, because we don't have that. We have carpet zeroed out in this year's budget. That's what I was wondering. Or do we move the cart path money over to general government as well, Matt?
Yeah, that is in the contingency, but we'll have to check to make sure that is that accurate, Laura? That
I can look at that. Sorry, I'm hitting my calculator.
There, Matt, she's trying to impress you with her calculator.
Yeah, I know it's.
You should just use Ron's. It's bigger.
Yeah.
Yes, $50,000 is in the contingency for cart path.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions regarding golf? Henry, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sal.
Thank you. Good night.
Night.
Good night, gentlemen.
The last one is general government. Back to you, Matt.
So this kind of wraps up the rest of the budget.
Did we get a tab number? We didn't get a tab number on that one, Matt.
It's all over. I think because I have a couple different things here I want to make sure we go over. One of the items I know is on the city attorney's budget. And I didn't know if we wanted to have that conversation, Bob, if you wanted to talk about that or anything today. And that would be tab number 9, by the way.
Well, I think I, basically put the issue in the letter that I wrote. I'm just respectfully requesting that our annual retainer, which is set at $130, go to $190, and that the hourly rate go from $80 to $125. I know that, as I said in my letter, there's never a good time to ask for this, but I work hard to try to keep, top of the line attorneys that graduate high in their graduating class, and each year expenses go up, and it's gone for quite a while. So I'm just asking that the council consider that.
Okay.
Matt?
So with that, if I mean, I don't know necessarily if council needs to make a decision before the budget on that, because as we look at kind of the historic spending and what is going to be happening down the road, there probably is room within the allotment that we have there right now to cover that if you want to make that decision later. But if you want to make that decision now, we can move it around before it's adopted, so you can have that in there. So I don't know what your pleasure on that will
You
be.
want to make it now?
Yeah, I think we should.
Decision now, I mean, now or later.
I mean, it would be great to be able to encapsulate it in the budget.
I think
Yeah.
we should. I think we should make that decision now.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mayor.
Mr. Cannon?
Yeah, I think one thing, I was texting with Bob of one thing I think maybe we should work on. There's a lot of different responsibilities that go to the city attorney's office. You know, public sees them at these meetings, but you know, doing ordinance reviews, dealing with enforcement and code enforcement over at the court, also basically being the prosecuting attorney in some respect over in the court as well in terms of enforcing our citations. And we don't really have anything that really documents that because that's just how it's been. So one of the things I suggested to Bob is that maybe we should have a memorandum of understanding of just delineates what are the city attorney's responsibilities and what's really covered within the retainer, and also because the hourly rate is really for anything outside of the city work and outside of the district court, primarily circuit court, court of appeals, to just kind of delineate what those are, just so we have a record of that.
Together.
Yeah. So Bob, you can kind of draft something for us to look at?
Sure, of course.
All right, thank you.
Including but not limited to, all right?
Right.
Yeah, include the Sunday inspections that you tend to go out to businesses for, and
Christmas.
You know, answering the phone at 9 p.m., 10 p.m. at night for many of us. All that has to be in there, Bob.
And on the beach in the Bahamas.
Bulletproof vest for seeing unfriendly customers.
Yeah.
And an unhackable email address.
Okay.
That is a must. An unhackable email address.
Thank you, John. I think I have it now.
Ms. Ruth?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'll back up Councilman Karen with his suggestion regarding a memorandum formalizing this type of thing. Do we currently have a contract with Bob or your office or anything like that? I mean, you've been the city attorney for what, 30 some years
or so. We do not have a contract, Councilwoman Rusi. My attitude, I've been offered contracts in the past, but I've always thought that if the council doesn't want us to represent them, I would not want to, hold the council up with technical contract language. So I've never asked for one, and it has never occurred.
I think, maybe putting something in writing like John has suggested, just so we formalize it, especially given now that we're discussing a rate increase. I think that would be appropriate. Of course, if Bob's drafting now, know who exactly we're going to have independently review it, given he's our attorney, he'd be the one drafting it for employment retainer type employment contract for himself. So that's something to think about too. But
have an attorney on council.
There will probably be
I don't get paid enough on council for that. But no, I think, the scope of the job has changed with the increase in technology. It's not 1982, everyone's expected to be on the ready, available. Everyone has a phone in their hand. People text, people email, and people expect a result like that. So, I think with the scope of the job changing in the past 30 or so years, I think it's appropriate to be discussing this at this point. And Bob also does a lot of things. I think people, like John said, some people may just think that they see him on TV and that's it. But Bob does even things for us as part of this retainer that aren't necessarily legal, but are more legal-esque. I know I've heard from neighbors feuding before and people who have issues with their neighbor's landscape truck or something, and he'll step in and he'll unofficially mediate some sort of peace between the parties. And that's that's not that won't be in the memorandum. That's not part of his retainer, but Bob does it to help out the residents of the city and us. So I think this is appropriate to discuss. But I think John brings up a great point about formalizing this a little bit in a memorandum about responsibilities. So it doesn't, and don't worry about if we decide we don't like you, it won't tie us to you, but just something where it explains some of the responsibilities and things. I think that would be a good part of this process as we discuss this. Thank you.
Sure. So, Mr. Vitale?
Just to add on to that, since we were kind of talking about, what comes 10 years from now, last council meeting, drawing up an MOU when the day comes when Mr. decides he doesn't want to be our attorney anymore, it might serve as a good basis for what we bid out.
Sure. Good. So, Bob, you'll put that together, and Matt, put the numbers in the budget, okay?
I will. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Real quick then, council, there's no changes to the budget for council. Boards and commissions, we kept effectively the same budget as in the current year's budget, so there's no changes there. I don't know if there was anything you wanted to talk about related to the boards and commissions.
No.
City manager, there's not a lot of changes there. We are looking at some of the professional development numbers we originally put in there because most of the professional development is being canceled going forward. So that number may be coming down a little bit. So we'll have that change before you vote on it. Finance department, Laura, I don't know if there's anything you want to add in the finance department.
No, I think anything new that is some capital that we'll discuss under the contingency in general government.
City clerk, Mary has been sitting there so quiet.
If I can answer questions for you, we're going into a presidential election year, which we're already in. Costs have increased substantially because of that and because of Prop 18.3. I did put an additional staff member into my budget that was pulled. It's something you need to be thinking about, and the salary is for an elections and records coordinator position to help with all the changes in the laws and record retention, which we can never get a handle of, and we have records that are starting to deteriorate.
And let me just say that probably would have made it into my budget request had we not got into what we got into where with the COVID, but we didn't want to totally tip the budget by adding, ongoing cost until we know where we're going to be when we come out of it. But I think that, we do have to look at some of the services that we're providing within the clerk's office and understand that to keep the level of services that we're providing, especially as it relates to the requests for our records and FOI and all that we're probably going to have to do something in the future to address it. I think there's some technology that we can do that will help it out, but in the end, it really is a hands-on type of thing that we have to deal with.
Mr. Frederick?
Yeah, Matt, along those lines, I know a few years back we asked to see all the FOIAs, and boy, I'm almost regretting that because it seems like you guys are doing one or two a day.
More than that.
It doesn't sound like much, but there's a lot of work behind the scenes to get that done, and the timing and the FOIA tracking and all of that. So I think you're right. I think we probably need to look at a better system for that in some fashion. And Mary, I heard today that the Secretary of State announced that they want to mail out to everybody in a sense an absentee ballot. Did I hear that correctly?
Application.
An application, not a ballot. So for everyone who is not on the permanent absentee application mailing list, which is approaching 14,000 in our city, people on the list. Another 35,000 applications will be mailed out to the rest of the registered voters in the city, not on the permanent mailing list, from the Secretary of State's office, with a letter of explanation about specifically because of COVID and trying to keep voters safe and making sure people can vote. We're proceeding both ways to open all 23 precincts for both upcoming elections unless there's a change because of the COVID-19.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you're on top of that. And I mean, it's going to be another crazy election. I think it'll be high turnout. So
I do have one thing I forgot to talk about. Historically, when we started doing passport application, the process back in 2001, shortly after I became city clerk, it was a revenue generator. We are finding that most of our residents in the city do have passports now. So we're taking, it seems like, more of the overflows from other cities, because at our peak, passports would generate $24,000 a year. This year, if we make 10,000, through June 30th, like, we're not even going to reopen that service right now. This would be if you would consider letting me stop that service because of the increase with the election law changes. It would almost be residents wouldn't be impacted as heavily because of limited out of state, out of country travel. And the passport agency is not even reopening except for emergencies until we're further down the COVID-19 process. And our revenue and our amount of residents utilizing that service is significantly less than it was years ago. It's
Mary,
something.
Can we do this for residents only, though?
No, we can't with the federal government. We're kind of stuck with it. We either have to do it, and the federal government is thrown more on the local acceptance agencies. They make $160 a year. They make the majority of the revenue on the passport, and it actually costs us a lot more than what it used to, because we have to priority mail and we only can put 7 in an envelope, where before we could stuff it. So our profit margin has significantly decreased.
We have a different fee for residents, non-residents?
No, we can't do that. You have to follow the federal rates they've established only.
Okay, Mr. Vitale.
Well, I guess it's kind of a follow-up to the question that Mary just answered. The federal government sets that rate structure. We can't raise it resident and non-resident.
We cannot. We can't charge. We don't do renewals because they cost actually the city money. When you think of a priority mailing, cost almost $16 to mail. If that one renewal would come in, it would cost the city $16. I couldn't charge the resident the fee because there are no fees the city makes on renewals. So it almost has become like more of an expense to the city, or a very slight revenue, what it used to be when we did it back in 2001.
That's something to put forward to federal representation. May not be aware of how they're handling us there. The other question I was going to ask, and Mr. Fedrick stole a little bit of my thunder. You said we have 14,000 that are on the permanent mailing right now for absentee. This announcement from Dana Nessel, she's only going to be mailing people who aren't on our permanent list?
Correct, because the election law requires a clerk that we may have to we maintain a permanent mailing list, and once you've created the list and as it grows, you're required by law every election to mail. So because it's our cost and our statutory duty for me as the clerk to provide that service, they're not mailing to those. They're going to mail to everyone who is not a permanent absentee voter.
So what I thought might, at least since the whole rest of it is a terrible idea, would save us some money, is not even going to save us any money.
It is not.
It's going to burn more state tax money.
Mr. Karen.
Yeah, Mary, back on the passports and understanding the difficult decision that is for you to have to bring that forward. for that not to be offered, if circumstances changed in a year, how long does it take to get that ramp back up from certification, training, to if we wanted to go back and do that after we get through not only COVID, but also with all the election law changes you got to deal with this year? That might be manageable again in the future.
Probably 2 to 3 months to get staff recertified. Because 2 of my employees are certified, they have to recertify every year. So depending where it would fall, if we wanted to bring it back, would be where their certification was at that time.
Okay.
So is this are we in the budget? We're not going to bring this back? Is that what we're saying, Matt?
No, right now it's just talking about it.
Right.
You know, there is an impact if we don't go forward and doing it. There's going to be some revenue impact, but really the cost impact, there is going to be a minimal cost impact savings.
Okay, so there's further discussion as we go forward.
Correct. And right now, as it is, we're not providing that service, and I don't know exactly when we can start providing that service again.
Ms. Rusi?
Thank you. Would there be some sort of happy medium, I guess, where if we offered it on more limited days, say every Friday or something like that, could we maintain certification? I just don't know how that works. Does it have to be an all or nothing, or can we just say we'll limit it to offering on Wednesdays or something along those lines, where we're still offering it, but it's more limited in terms of its impact on your department? And we could do that to help maintain the certification, everything necessary to be able to offer it on a more broader basis in the future if we so choose.
I will have to talk with the federal passport office because when we limited our hours years ago to 12 hours a week, because everyone went to appointment onlys, and we had chosen not to do that at that time. If and when we return to service, I think we will do passports only if that's the direction of, or appointment only if that's a direction of council. So I can make sure we have staffing and it allows my staff to continue to perform our required statutory services first.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, thanks, Mary.
You're welcome.
Moving on, assessing, there is no changes in the assessing budget. General government, the only change in the general government cost center is we added all the capital items into the contingency, and so that's going to be talked about at a future date. Communications, again, there are no changes. Any of the capital requests have been taken out and put into the contingency as well. Building maintenance, there's effectively no changes in the building maintenance budget request.
Matt?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Just quick note on that one, that we do have, the large expenditure for the parking lot in there. Yes. So we kind of split it between 2 budget years in that. So correct. Going forward, that's still a major capital expense that we still have in an individual general fund budget that's out there, but that will go away in future years.
Yes, and that's, when we look at the capital, the decision was made when we agreed to move forward with that project, that would take up this year or the upcoming year's parking lot project, and then we start on other parking lots then in out years. Let's see. Try to see where we need to go still. IT. So for the most part, the information technology has not changed, but this is the one where I think, we've exposed during this COVID crisis a lot of need. And Laura, just to verify, we had talked earlier, is the money in, where did you put the money?
I'm sorry, I missed that part.
The $150,000 we had talked about?
Oh, the 150,000 is
Yeah.
in general government.
Okay, so that is actually in the contingency, or?
Yes, in the contingency.
So we had set aside $150,000 for IT improvements, and primarily for looking at the financial software that we have, because there's a number of decisions we have to make for that. Also from the community development, actually going online with what they call a service portal. So we can actually start having contractors go in, submit for permits, schedule different inspections and such. And we think that that would be really good, and hopefully it would be used quite a bit and reduce some of the staffing concerns that we may have going down the road. There's a number of different things. We want to do a review first of our infrastructure to make sure that we have what we need in place. And then the next step would be present different options to mayor and council in the future to show, okay, these are the things that we think we need to make, purchases we need to make to be able to get us to where I believe you're trying to lead us to, which is get a lot more services online, be a lot more mobile friendly, and offer those services to people wherever they're at.
Yep. Mr. Karen?
Oh, never mind. I think I just found it. I was looking for the $150,000 that Laura just mentioned, and it's actually combined with our normal contingency, which is $150,000, along with IT upgrades. So
Correct.
for $300,000 line item. Okay.
And again, you know, we going into this budget, I wanted to set money aside to start moving forward with that. We didn't have a good plan yet because we haven't been able to get the first part, which is that review of our system done, to be able to say, okay, here's from the network perspective what we have to do.
Ms. Ruthie?
Thank you. I see as a goal, we have online web shopping cart for garbage and recycling containers.
Yes.
I've been bringing that for a few years. Do you promise this is going to happen this fiscal year?
I don't know. I don't know if I'm a betting man enough to make that promise, but I think it really goes back to ultimately what we do with the financial software. You know, Munis is a very powerful enterprise financial software, but there are some limitations with it. And when you have a very robust, well-staffed IT department, you can make up for some of the limitations that it has. You know, for example, reporting. You know, you're given access to a certain stock type of reports, but if you want reports that are actually functional for you, you have to pay someone or pay Munis to actually produce those reports for you.
Yeah, I guess I haven't understood what's been the holdup in this, because you can go on our city website, make a donation to various things. We took them for potential burn for the historical commission behind the museum. We took them for some other city activities. We were able to sell tickets to events through our website finally, but we can't buy a garbage can. So hopefully we can get that, because I get that question at least once or twice a month from residents about, can I just go online and buy a garbage can? I could go online and buy everything else, and I have to tell them, not yet. So I'm hoping to see that this year.
Yep.
Thank you.
We'll actually make that one of our goals. So
it is on the goals, but it's been on the goals. I want to see a reality, not just a goal. That's my dream.
That's what I was saying, is we'll make it a goal to actually live up to that goal.
Very good. I have very modest dreams. That's one of them. Thank you.
I don't know if there's anything else on the IT. And I think, is there anything we missed, Laura?
I don't think so. I think that the only thing we did not discuss on tab 33 in the front, I did put a kind of summary for the utility, and that is also where you'll find the utility rates. I don't know if you were going over that, Matt.
If we want to go over that, we will.
Yeah, I didn't, because that will have to come on, if we make a change, it of course will have to come on June 1st when we have the budget adoption.
It's always part of the whole motion.
Right.
So right now, as the utility budget stands, we would be looking at a 4.6% increase or 4.3.
It was 4.3 in the water and 2.6 on the sanitary. Right, Laura?
Right, our combined, yes. Yes, that's correct.
Mr. Vitale? He's muted.
Oh.
There you go.
I'm sorry, Mary. If I mute myself, then I can't unmute. I was just going to say on the utility fund issue, I think we want to have that come back up in June. I want to know why we're raising their rates.
Sure. Okay, we'll be prepared to discuss it. Ms. Rusi?
Oh, thank you. I didn't hear all of Chris's question. I had a message on mine that says my connection is unstable, but so I don't know if I'm asking the same or similar. Billing charge per bill is increasing, proposed at $18.69. What is the justification for that increase?
So as we look at, there's a couple things going on with this. The first and biggest issue impacting us is the cost of the commodity. So the water, Great Lakes Water Authority is increasing the purchase cost. And then on the treatment side, SMSD is increasing the overall cost. And so those two are the big drivers for ultimately what that increase is going to be. The third area of that is as we look at the future years out, because what we're doing is trying to make sure that we don't get into that situation where all of a sudden we have to do 10 and 15% increases because of starting to run into a negative as we get into the out years. We feel at this point in time that 4.3% overall increase is necessary.
This is just getting really expensive per bill. It's almost $20 on top of the unit prices. I mean, and the other fees. This is just getting really expensive to put on a resident in addition to their unit-based costs and everything. Almost $20 per quarter. That's a lot. Just a comment.
Mr. Frederick?
Yeah, I'll follow up on that because I know I asked this question every budget since I've been on council. Is, you know, when are we going to get to monthly online? I know you can pay online now, but quarterly. But to go monthly online, and even in an estimated way,
We have that.
pay
We
that
have
monthly, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, for people who are struggling with a 3-month bill that, you know, especially as you get into the summer and you're watering your grass and doing all that stuff.
They can do that now.
Mm-hmm.
You can do budgeting payments.
Right. But I guess what I would like to see at some point is, as we go forward with this whole IT thing that you're talking about, Matt, that there'd be a way to actually include that. In other words, an easy box to check for a resident when they come in, and now they're billed monthly. So, I mean, unless you want them, how does that process work now? Do they have to come to the counter and get set up, or how do they do it?
Yes, and that is only they're on a monthly, but they don't get a monthly bill. We would have to change our whole system to actually bill monthly.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not looking to add to that expense of mailing out every month, but I know that I get a credit card bill, not in the mail, over my computer that I pay when it shows up. Right. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, tying it to IT, so that we're eliminating some postage and as we move through the whole IT process, these are the kinds of things that I think will help residents the most and actually save us some money.
I want a printed bill. Can I still get a printed bill?
Sure.
Yes.
You can print it out from your computer, Chris.
Yeah.
Print it out
Do
from
I have to pay extra for it? Maybe
Yes. Just you though. Just you.
Maybe I don't want the slow monthly drain of not realizing all the GLWA inefficiencies. I want to be shocked every 3 months and angry.
Wow.
Okay, anything else, Mr. Koppler?
The only thing that I see that we didn't really talk about, and it was during the recreation, this brought up a topic that there's been a discussion and an issue that I see within the way that we, I guess our pay scales for the seasonal employees that we have and even temporary employees that we have. So again, not understanding how you've done this in the past, I tried to look to see how you have done this. And normally what you would have is a council resolution out there somewhere that says, these are the pay rates that you will pay for seasonal employees. And whether it's updated every year because of the increase in the minimum wage, or, you decide to give people increases, you would have that. We don't have that. And in looking through the short time that I've been here and watching how this process kind of plays out, there doesn't seem to be a lot of good reason why we pay our seasonal and part-time employees and temporary employees what we pay them. And that's something that, has recently come to a head within recreation because of a desire to pay someone what, from my perspective, is well outside of my pay range to make that decision. Because again, I don't have a lot of guidance from any actions of council what those pay rates need to be. What I would like to do is prepare a proposed grid that shows what the pay ranges should be, we think, and provide that to you and get some feedback and point out those areas where there's a request from departments for higher than what I would deem to be normal. But they feel that there's justification within paying employees that amount of money to get savings down the road. And I guess right now, I just want to get a process in place to start that so we can get that discussed at the council level.
I think that sounds okay, Matt. I think in the past, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like we put the budget together and we'll put the temporary staff number, and we've expected that the department maintains that amount. And I guess how they, pay out has been for them to determine, but we allocated, 50,000 and making the number up, right? 50,000 in temporary. And then they've taken it from there. Here's my pot of money. And then they pay it out. So, I mean, that's probably maybe why you don't see any records, I guess, right? You don't see anything because I don't think we've got that deep into the situation. We've done the more high level and let them run their department.
Well, and again, I think if that is the process we want, I'm okay with that. But again, I don't want to get in a situation where you start looking, at pay rates of people and saying, why are we paying this person this amount? I would rather be upfront. We all understand what it is we're paying our seasonal part-time people. So there isn't any, misunderstanding going down the road.
Ms. Rusi?
I mean, we do have the rates in the budget in the department staffing summary pages. They always do include the rates times the hours, and that's how we budget. So we do have the rates within the budget that we pass every year.
Yes.
As to setting those rates, I guess that comes from the department. They put in the budget. We make the budget using those numbers with the anticipated amount of hours. That's how we come to arrive at the amounts in the budget. But we do have the rates in the budget.
And so in my process, what I would normally do is I would look to see if there's any action by council, to see if there's something like that. And, absent a resolution, my next thing is I go to the budget and look to see what those rates are. And again, I don't necessarily see what's being requested fit within those rates. And so there's two ways, again, that we can go about this, I guess. One is what I just suggested in terms of coming up with that pay grid, or we can make sure that everything is reflected adequately in the document that we give you, that you adopt, and then we're good to go. And
Yeah, I think
we change it.
I think the latter is what we've been anticipating has happened in the past, where we pass the budget, listing the rates, listing the amount of hours, saying the money, and we trust that that will be adhered to because it's in the budget that we do adopt as a council.
Okay.
Mr. Karen?
Thank you. Yeah, just like the mayor said, I don't think we've ever really looked at it that hard, because as long as you're meeting the total budgeted number, it wouldn't raise any questions to us. But just like Councilwoman Rusi had said, yeah, we do have the different rates in there, and I'm looking at the one page where I do see a large discrepancy between what one of the areas was being asked for versus that. Yeah, it's not listed in the budget that way. We have a very specific number in the budget versus the desire to be able to offer a little more of a range, which, yeah, I think if you can come back to us in terms of maybe what those ranges are, because I think maybe to get, better temporary talent that comes in, maybe you do have to do a little bit more negotiation on the range of it. That it's just not all, because I think all these were really set at minimum wage and above it by X percent, depending on if someone's going to be in a little more leadership position or not. And that's what we would approve. Because I know, because we did, as minimum wage started to go up, that has been reflected in past budgets in terms of the number. And we have kept up with that. But probably looking at so that there is that range, but then still maintaining the overall budget number is probably something we can work into having that documented so that you got the flexibility to hire better talent, but you're still going to meet the budget number.
Yeah. Right.
And get people to come back. Good people to come back.
Exactly.
And if in fact Parks and Rec does have valuable employee that can offset by maybe outsourcing business, right, or outsourcing work, I mean, there's maybe value in that too, right? But they would put that together, right, Matt?
Yep. Correct.
All right, so you got your direction, right?
Yep, I did. Thank you very much. So any other questions?
Yeah. Yep. Just a kind of final thoughts, because I know last week I sent you a bunch of questions and asking to look at numbers compare. So appreciate all the responses that came back to the questions earlier last week. Saves a lot of time from going through that during this process. But also, again, want to thank, Laura, Renee, and probably even Kathy, I'm guessing as well, in terms of trying to put this together when all the pieces are in a little different location is challenging. And I totally recognize that, but I greatly appreciate getting us on a journey to where we can get everything into one system. In my current job, I've got one task where I've got to make sure the same piece of data is correct in 3 different locations. Drives me nuts every day. So totally get what you guys are going through here to get this straightened out. So thank you for the finance staff and the department heads and Matt and Bill for putting all the time into going through the budget. We all know it's going to be a lean year now, and I'm glad we're getting ahead of it as we're going into next year. So thank you for all that.
I want to say thanks to Laura for her first budget with the captain's hat on. Nice job. Way to go.
Mr. Vitale?
I just wanted to mention a budget hearing. If someone didn't mention that this is all Gatsby, great Gatsby, in fact.
Oh, no donuts for finance.
Maybe so now donuts. Do you get the donuts?
Maybe donuts when City Hall opens again. Thank you, Chris. I guess Chris gets the donuts. He remembered.
Right.
There'll be salt bagels if I bring them.
Yeah.
Oh, I love those. Bring them.
With that, we'll move on to audience participation. And they can have 5 minutes to speak under. The views and opinions are expressed or theirs. That do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of the mayor, the city council, or administration of the city of St. Clair Shores. You can dial it to speak at 1-312-626-6799. The meeting code is 886-248-7291 pound. I don't see. Do you see anyone online? Mary, do you have any emails?
I have no emails.
I don't see anyone raising their hand that anyone is online. No one here. So I don't think there's any public comments. So I will just concur what was said. Thank you, Matt. Job well done under tough times. Tough times. Thank you both for your first budget here, and we appreciate it. So with that, we'll have a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Karen, supported by Ms. Rusi to adjourn. Mr. Karen?
Aye.
Ms. Rusi?
Aye.
Mr. Asia?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Vitale?
Aye.
Walby votes aye, 6-0. Okay, thank you, everyone. Good night.
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 Good night.